we have 30 minutes here on this bill. Let's see how this plays. The chair lays out House Bill 775 and recognizes Representative Howard to discuss the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this is Representative Guillen's bill that I'm just laying out for him, hopefully it will go quickly since I can't actually answer any questions about it.
Get ready for heavy grilling.
I will lay it out, though. HB 775 follows the Legislative Budget Board recommendation to expand the allowable use of the System Benefit Fund to finance a credit enhancement program at the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs to assist in providing low-interest loans for financing energy-related projects. So basically, let's see, let me move down here. It implements a credit enhancement program to assist in providing low-interest loans and other appealing financing terms for weatherization projects. It sets out a percentage of the distribution from the System Benefit Fund appropriation so that I can find his numbers here. 75% is used for the purposes of assisting with the discount on the bills. 20% is used for, I believe, weatherization. 5% is used for administration. I am, as I said, just laying this out for him, so I don't have all the details of that. It was based on a Legislative Budget Board recommendation. I do know that. And the assumption here is that the amount that is saved by people who would do the weatherization is going to be greater in the long term. I think, of course, the issue here might be, though, how much we actually appropriate, because, as we know, we're not appropriating all of that fund, and there is a great need to assist those who need this assistance with their energy bill. So with that, Madam Chair, I know you have some witnesses.
Right. We have the LBB here. So the chair calls Patrick Moore with the LBB. And but if you can help walk us through it quickly.
Sure. Patrick Moore, Legislative Budget Board. Just to reiterate what Representative Howard was saying, the bill essentially has two components to it. It would create a statutory allocation for future System Benefit Fund appropriations, whereby after costs for administration and education are taken care of, 75% would go towards the low-income discount program, and 20% would go for weatherization at Department of Housing, and up to 5% for one-time bill pay assistance that would also be administered by the Public Utility Commission. That's basically putting a statutory percentage next to what are already currently allowable uses, but that are not regularly funded. The only regularly funded allowable use is the low-income discount portion of that. The second portion of the bill has to do with establishing a credit enhancement program, which would provide certain flexibility to the Department of Housing to create one or multiple loan programs that would also assist low-income populations with their utility bills. And per the fiscal note, the Department of Housing stated that they would be setting up a loan program that would be used for due on sale of low-income homeowners, meaning that the loan would go for energy efficiency upgrades and improvements at low-income homeowner units, and then those loans would be repaid to the state based on the time of sale or upon the time where that resident was no longer listing that area as their primary residence. There's a general revenue dedicated cost to the bill of the System Benefit Fund account of $10 million in the biennium, and that is to pay for administrative expenses as well as capitalizing the loan program, the credit enhancement program.
Ratliff?
I'm going to try to ask it real quick. Under E1-3, do we have any kind of track record on what percentage of that money is currently used for people that are medically fragile?
E1-3, that is to assist low-income customers with one-time bill pay assistance, and that has never been funded through the System Benefit Fund account.
Is there a program out there today, though, it's mainly for people with disabilities that are medically fragile. Is there a program out there today that funds them?
There's a federal program, LIHEAP, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. Department of Housing is the administrator of that program and may have more information on that, but a great component of that, which is similar to the Low Income Discount Program, the System Benefit Fund, is to provide utility rate reductions, and they also have a specific component that is similar to what's outlined in statute for the System Benefit Fund, which is the one-time bill pay assistance.
I want to get with you after the meeting and talk a little bit more about that. I'm concerned about capping that for our medically fragile community. Just because we reduce their rate doesn't mean they can still afford to pay it. So having electricity and being able to use electricity are two different issues.
Right. As far as the Public Utility Commission's rules regarding this portion are, I believe the cap is set at either 3 months of utility bill expenditures that resident may be behind on, or up to $1,000.
I'd like to follow up with you outside of this meeting.
Sure. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Brian Lloyd with PUC of Texas as a resource, testifying neutral.
Madam Chairman, I'm Brian Lloyd, the Executive Director of the Public Utility Commission, and I'm here just to answer any questions if you have any.
I'll ask real quickly. So what LBB just said is that we haven't been funding some of these efforts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's been going to the assistance with paying the electric bills.
Historically, the only program of the authorized ones outside of administrative funding for the agency customer education has been the low-income discount program, yes. So
I know that you discussed in other hearings that have altered the timing of year to diminish the number of months in which this is offered, to change the percentage perhaps that's offset on the bill. With what's being proposed in this bill, that would further reduce those people who would benefit from that aspect of the program, because it would require that within some certain appropriation, that a portion of it would have to go to other activities.
So I think the answer to your question is yes. I mean, I think the contingency rider that the subcommittee considered on this contemplated a transfer of money away from the low-income discount program to funding these other programs. The legislature could certainly decide instead to appropriate more money and
deal with it that way.
Then let me
understand, with the contingency rider, you're saying that there's not going to be a decreased amount going to the service that's primarily now being offered.
Well, I think I'm saying this the opposite. So House Bill 1 was introduced as a specific appropriation for the low-income discount program. There was no funding in the budget as filed for the one-time bill payment assistance or the weatherization program. The contingency rider that was filed for this bill, I believe, would then just transfer money, the money in House Bill 1 for the low-income program over to these weatherization programs. So you'd have less of a discount resulting from that.
So I think now you've answered my question.
Okay.
That would be less amount dedicated to the discount.
Correct. It'd be the House Bill 1 as introduced was around a 15% discount. This bill, by our projection, with the money coming out of that program into this one, would drop it to about a 10 or 11% discount.
Is there, okay. The chair calls Marisha Harwood of the National MS Society and representing herself. And she's testifying for. And I mispronounced your name, I'm quite sure. Thank you for coming today. Welcome. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Chairwoman Crownover, Vice Chair Longoria, and committee members. My name is Markeisha Harewood, and I thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective as a Texan living with multiple sclerosis and my support for HB775 by Representative Geen. As you know, multiple sclerosis is an unpredictable, often disabling disease of the central nervous system that interrupts the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and body. Symptoms range from numbness and tingling to blindness and paralysis. The progress, severity, and specific symptoms of MS in any one person cannot yet be predicted, but advances in research and treatment are moving us closer to a cure. Most people with MS are diagnosed between the ages of 20 and 50, with at least 2 to 3 times more women than men being diagnosed with the disease. I was diagnosed with MS when I was 29. I was in graduate school when I began to notice the cognitive difficulties. I was always a whiz kid at school, and I was surprised when my professors told me that my usual exemplary papers were incoherent. I ended up leaving graduate school, but my symptoms continued to progress. I started experiencing problems with my eyesight, and my eye doctor referred me to an ophthalmologist who referred me to a neurologist. A lumbar puncture revealed a very old lesion. Learning about the diagnosis was hard, but I'm a glass-half-full type of person. Heat greatly exacerbates the symptoms of MS. I work as a tax examiner, and crossing the parking lot during the summer leaves me extremely fatigued. It's like taking a sleeping pill, but you have to stay awake. It can take 4 hours to recover. The fatigue can be so bad that I nod off at meetings, which is embarrassing. I use a handicapped accessible parking spot now to be closer to the building, and having to get an accessible parking sticker while in my 20s was difficult. Staying cool is a priority. My home electric bills during the summer months can be as high as $300, but I don't have a choice. I will be unable to get out of bed if I get too hot. I have a good job, and I have insurance to help me with the cost of controlling my MS. I can manage my utility bills. MS can be an expensive disease. The 9 FDA-approved drugs to delay progression of the disease cost between $25,000 to $45,000 a year, which can mean high out-of-pocket costs for many Texans. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for people who are on disability or who struggle with the cost of their medications and are on tight budgets to manage unusually high electric bills in the summer. For Texans living with a chronic illness, assistance to manage the cost of utilities can make the difference that allows that person to afford critical, life-saving medications. And House Bill 775 will provide financial assistance when families are at their most vulnerable. On behalf of Texans living with MS, I ask that you continue to keep in mind the needs of low-income Texans living with chronic illness. I support HB 775, and I thank you for all you're doing to help Texans afford their utility bills. Thank you for your time, and thank you for making my first time here easy. I know you could tell I was nervous.
No, we couldn't tell at all. Thank you. That's a very dramatic story, and I bet a lot of people up here have friends with MS, so we have been praying for a cure for a long time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. Thank you.
The chair calls Walt Baum with ACET, testifying against.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members. My name is Walt Baum, and I'm here today testifying on behalf of AECT, the Association of Electric Companies of Texas. We're for full funding of the SBF, and we have been in past sessions. And we support funding for energy efficiency programs as well, and think a lot of these low-income energy efficiency programs can be helpful. Our only concerns with the bills were just like the discussion with Mr. Lloyd about that with this bill you could change the priority and end up with less money going to the low-income discounts. And we've in the past supported the current priority that's in legislation, to where most of the money goes to the low-income discounts. But we'd be very happy to work with LBB and the author and Speaker Turner on making sure the percentages, if you're changing them up, making sure it's an amount that everybody's comfortable with. And with that, I'll be quick.
Questions?
Thank you very much.
The chair calls Carol Bajczek Baginski with Texas Ratepayers Organization to Save Energy, testifying you're neutral on the bill. Well, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a long morning, and I will try and get to my point very quickly. I have the clerk passing a single sheet of paper out to you, which is my personal tracking of the budgets and appropriations, the budgets that have been approved by this legislature since this fund was created. And as you can see, there's a lot of inconsistency in the numbers, and the two that I would point out to you are that if you look in the FY 10-11 and FY 12-13 column, you'll see that there was $251 million spent on the rate discount in that biennium, and that dropped to $152 million in this biennium. So that's like $100 million less that is being used to help low-income people pay, afford their electricity. And then if we go further down the line, you'll see that in FY 10-11 there was $2.4 million spent on market oversight, and in this biennium, $12 million. So there are some problems here with the way the funds are being appropriated, in my opinion. And so I didn't testify. I didn't sign up testifying against this bill because I really like the idea of having some percentages in place to govern where these funds go and to make sure that all the programs that are included in here get funding like on a regular basis instead of having everything like yo-yo around every year. Now, I'm not really sure that I love the percentages that are in here and in the front part of this bill, but I think that's something that could be discussed and maybe, worked out between people. And I would also suggest that on the very first page of the bill that talks about provide one-time bill payment assistance, Representative Ratliff, you brought up questions about that, and that one time, every time I have the opportunity to cross out the words one time in this bill, I try and do it, because the one time I can't begin to tell you what an issue the words one time were at the PUC in actually developing the rule that has never been used to fund these programs. But I agree with you. I think that if someone is critically ill, that we shouldn't just give them one payment, which is the way this was interpreted, that we should be able to continue to provide them with assistance if they need it. So the percentages are okay. I do have a concern with the second part of the bill, which is called the credit-enhanced loans to benefit low-income customers. I have a problem with it because, number one, it could very well reduce the amount of funding that is made available to the rate discount program, and that's something that I don't want to happen. I also don't think that it's necessary or that it's a good use of these funds. And I see that there are three uses that are outlined in here. One is if you look down in Section 2 on my copy, it's like at line 20. First of all, it says that loans can be made to low-income electric customers. Well, I personally, I think there's a lot of evidence out there that low-income customers do not get loans because from the industries and from the banks because they can't afford to pay them back. And I question the wisdom of setting up a fund that will provide loans to people who you are not expecting them to be able to pay them back. And I don't think that I'm, thinking this through too much, because if you look at the next section of the bill, it addresses using the funds for a loan loss reserve set aside, a loan guarantee, so this is an issue. And the reason why we have programs that are free for people at this very low income level is because they simply cannot afford to pay for, the work themselves. The second use of the funds is for an owner of housing for low-income persons. I'm assuming that means people who own rental property that they rent to low-income people. Right now, you can use what the regular weatherization program funds. That program is designed to provide weatherization for apartment complexes. So I don't think that that's really necessary. It can be done under the procedures that are already set up for low-income weatherization. And then the last section is a private developer or other entity that constructs or, low-income housing units. And it just seems if you want standards met, that you should be able to get those standards written into the procedures that are currently in place at the housing agencies that fund these programs. And it looks to me like we are not directly benefiting low-income customers, we're benefiting developers. And I do understand that there's a logic where sooner or later the benefit is going to land, that it may benefit the low-income customer, but it's just not direct enough for me. So I would really like to see a lot more work get put into this before it goes anywhere, because I see some problems. And I personally would like to see the low-income programs, like fully funded through the System Benefit Fund. And any of you who have been around here for a while know that I've been talking about this since the fund was started. And that concludes my testimony. I'll be happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
I agree with some of your concerns, especially for a profit group. It seems like that could get real complicated really quickly. I would like to ask you, you are registered as being neutral on the bill. Your testimony sounds maybe that you are against.
Yeah, well, I was kind of, I wasn't exactly sure which way to go, because like I said, I do like the idea of the percentages, and I think that's important. I don't think that the bill has no value, because I think that would be a very positive change to make. But I do have big problems with the loans.
So you want to be listed as being neutral or against?
I think it's probably more fair for me to change it to against. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else wishing to testify on for or against House Bill 775? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Howard for any final comments.
I close. Thank you.
Representative Howard, House Bill 775 will be left pending at this time. Thank you, members, for your diligence. This concludes the agenda for today. Are there any